Okay, so Justin asked me to give a short presentation on effective academic posters. That is because we're doing a poster session. We have a big end of year DAX poster session.
And why you?
What?
Why Maddie? Because Maddie wins awards for her posters, and because
the poster will be featured in the presentation.
And taught classes where people are doing posters.
And because I can sort of in some ways speak for the logistics of DAX. So those are going to be the kind of two things that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about, what makes a good academic poster, and then move on to a little bit more of like the logistics of the poster session on May 5th itself. So yeah, definitely mark that in your calendar. The poster session will be Thursday, May 5th. That is the day after classes end. And it will be in the design building here on campus. And the background here is the design building. So this concrete floor that you see in the background sort of is where we will be presenting the posters. So poster design. Feel like we should all be in some respects it feels a little silly, like some of it's intuitive, right? Where many of us are in a degree about data communication, and good poster design is all about data communication. So these are a few different sort of like mock-up wireframe template type things, and they're abundant on the internet. I think my number one piece of advice is that like there are so many resources online for making good posters. So you guys will get access to these slides, but there's way more than I could have possibly included. That's all really valuable. So if you're looking for more resources, there are plenty out there to find. I do want to take a minute to actually play this video for us though, because it just kind of covers the basics really, really well.
Even if you're not invited to speak at your next scientific meeting, you still have a great opportunity to share your results and wow your fellow scientists at a poster session. A well-designed poster that efficiently gets across your main ideas can make the difference between a lackluster showing and a standout appearance. Here, we'll go over some things to consider when making a research poster, from content and organization to increasing visual appeal. The number one mistake of scientific posters is to pack in too much information. Even the most interested visitors to your poster are not prepared to stand for half an hour and read the entire thing, so make it easy for them to get the gist. You don't need to include all the information you would in a manuscript, and you don't need to use full sentences. Use bullet points. Justifying your text on the left side can help make it easier to read. And as always, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Your figures are the heart and soul of your poster. Use them to your advantage and don't bury them with large blocks of text that no one will read. Structure is just as important to a poster as it is to a paper. Present your ideas in a logical order, with your poster layout facilitating this organization. Keep in mind that people naturally read from left to right and from top to bottom. One popular option is to split a horizontally oriented poster into 3 columns. Regardless of the pattern you choose, make sure it's clear to readers where to start and end. In designing your poster, don't be afraid of white or negative space. If you fill every inch, your poster will look cluttered and be hard for viewers to take in. In fact, as much as 40% of your poster should be blank. Use this space strategically to draw attention to your most important messages. Color can really liven up your poster, but be selective. Only use 3 to 5 colors and avoid ones that are too bright or print poorly. Don't even think of using patterns or dark colors for the background. These can be distracting, hard on eyes, and will also make your figures look bad. Keep it simple. White is the easiest to work with and the cheapest to print. Even if your poster looks great and includes the right level of information, if the text is too small, you'll annoy visitors and drive away your audience. A good rule of thumb is to have everything easily visible from 6 feet away and nothing smaller than 24 point. Avoid unprofessional fonts such as Comic Sans, and don't include too many different fonts. It will give your poster a chaotic look. For your body text, it's usually a good idea to choose a serif font. Those are the ones with the extra strokes at the end of letters, like Times New Roman, which are easier to read when small. For titles and headings, pick a non-serif or sans serif font, such as Arial or Helvetica. Short and sweet titles are usually better. Because many conference attendees scan the poster session titles to find the presentations they don't want to miss, a good title that conveys your message and a well-written abstract can really draw people to your poster. Don't assume a cell-worthy figure can simply be slapped onto your poster. Simplify your graphs and provide titles and even arrows to help your readers along. Consider relabeling your images with more general descriptions so that scientists from outside your specific field will still get the basics of a given experiment. And summary figures do wonders for giving passersby the gist of your work. If it's artfully done, they might even stick around to hear more. Of course, remember to think about how to present your poster as well. An attractive design will still fall flat if you get flustered trying to explain it, but master both and you're set to be a hit at your next poster session.
Awesome. I think that's a pretty useful video. It covers the basics pretty quickly. As do these links. They're all good for, all very good in a general sense, and then each has, some specifics that I think are effective. Both the videos are pretty corny. This one was much better than these, which have actual humans in them and are just, as corny as academic videos get. But
Share that since we can't actually hit the links on here. Will you share
I'll share the link so that what's your question, Justin?
Yeah, whether you could share the link since we can't actually link onto them from the screen.
Yeah. You'll have access to be able to have them as live links. Anyway, they're more about the actual give and take of the presentation. The videos are. Is it? Okay. Yeah. So this is my poster from last year, and I'm including it and want to talk about it in that I think one of the most effective ways to talk about designing a poster is, as the video suggested, kind of like a story. And it's especially helpful. It's always especially helpful for me to think about any presentation or paper or poster or anything, for school as telling a story, and using a visual tool like a poster is very helpful for me in sort of structuring my own thoughts and my own argument. So thinking about how I'm going to present it to somebody else really helps clarify for me what I need to do. And so I'm putting my poster here as an example so that I can talk you guys through some of the decisions that I was making in terms of the design that helped me sort of better identify what choices I should make with respect to the content as well. So if we go to the next page, this is sort of like a little bit of a mock-up. The first thing that I want to mention on this page is that this sort of mock poster here is a 4x3 poster. So that's the ratio that you should be going for. It should be 48 inches by 36 inches. Like, that's the most important thing that we need you guys to get right. And I think it's useful to have on this whole screen because you can see just how different that is from the slides that you're used to. So don't just use the slide that you're used to. You have to set the page dimensions first. So I set this up so that it looked kind of similar in structure to my poster here. I can kind of talk you through the different decisions that I made. One thing that's really important is to have that catchy title. I think that having a catchy title really helps me, use my alliteration. People like catchy titles, like definitely put some thought into it. Justin gave us DAX. So, you should be able to come up with a good title for your poster as well. Let your subtitle do the more explanatory work of like what you actually did or what your actual research question is. Make sure that your poster has your names and your email addresses on it. It's very important for academic posters to have contact information as well as your affiliation. Later in the presentation, I will sort of show you where you guys can get links to the actual UMass sort of branding stuff, as well as the DAX branding stuff, because you should use the official stuff and not just sort of type in data analytics and computational social science. One thing that I don't like from my poster now that I look back at it is that this doesn't line up with this, which doesn't line up with this. So on this mock-up, I did a better job of using a grid line that is not actually there if I were to print this mock-up, but is sort of implied. So the more sort of parallel or symmetrical structure you can have, the better. Another thing that I did on this mock-up that maybe you can't tell at first glance, but that is appealing to the eye, is that this length here is the same as this length here, even though this one's a little bit wider. So doing things like that throughout the poster design are really helpful in making your poster more visually appealing without even your viewers noticing that. So in terms of storytelling, one of the reason why I think it's so valuable to talk about this now is because we all have a lot of work to do, and there is sort of a tendency to do more work than could possibly fit on your poster. And I think that's how people end up with those posters that are just so shoved full of text that's like microscopic, right? And they actually look awful and you can't read them, and people just walk past them because it's too complicated and they just don't want to have anything to do with it. But it also really sucks to have put like so much time into something, making all these graphs, doing all this analysis, and then not feeling like you have place to share it on your poster. So like save yourself the trouble and do a wireframe mockup like this of just how much content your poster really needs before you're done doing all of your analysis. So homework, Justin mentioned that homework 4 is going to involve like a progress sort of update on your project. And I suggest that one of the things that people consider for that is to do a sort of mock-up or a wireframe like this, so you don't do more work than is like actually reasonable or necessary, and then end up in a position where you're like, I can't even fit this on my poster.
Yeah, I'll do that.
I say that in part because like that's what happened here. This like one last thing section on my poster, like I probably didn't need it. I probably already had enough, but I spent 3 days like running my laptop into the ground on a super computationally expensive model that it really wasn't capable of running. And so like it pained me that like I wasn't going to get, like I had to shove it on there somehow because I wasted so much time that like this had to end up there. But honestly, like it was an afterthought and I didn't have a lot to say about it because it took my laptop so much time to make it that like I didn't understand it fully, and like I spent much more time talking about this, right? And so keep those things in mind as you're doing the work for your project, that like you don't need to do more work than is going to fit. I use that section over here as my suggestion of, I know many of you are combining posters for multiple classes. That is also tricky in that the impulse is like, oh, I need to make sure I have stuff that speaks to this class and stuff that speaks to this class. Your poster's not big enough. Like it's just not. So you have to sort of be decisive about what to include and what not to include. And if that means that the one class that is, you're stretching to call it, something for networks or something for text or something for machine learning. If that one has a little bit of a smaller section, that has to be okay. The solution to that is to additionally have a handout that you can give to people who come by your poster with your supplemental materials, just like you would in a paper. So you can add additional graphs, you can add additional information about that second class that isn't sort of making it fully onto your poster. And it's also a good opportunity to have something to hand out to people that has your contact information on it. And something to remember you and your poster by, because I know many of us are going to be using this as a networking opportunity. Things that show up from the video, I used a simple light colored background, using an accent color, but sparingly, making sure, like allowing for some white space here and here, without feeling like I have to cram everything in. So additional details, and these are, I'm not going to dwell on these because she did cover them in the video. This graphic is really useful. It's from one of the articles linked on that earlier slide, in suggesting what font size or what font sizes are appropriate. So for body text, you shouldn't go below 24-point font. I think that's just sort of got to be everyone's rule to live by. Captions could be a little bit smaller. The actual text that's embedded in your ggplots is going to be smaller. But your titles, your subheadings, and your body text need to be readable, legible from 5 or 6 feet away. I mean, it's COVID, right? So like, we don't want anyone crowding your poster anyway. You should choose only 2 fonts, as the video mentioned, a sans serif and a serif font. What is so interesting to me and is sort of difficult in creating this PowerPoint is that in online mediums, we actually, big blocks of text are in sans serif fonts, and frequently headings are more likely to be in serif fonts. So like, that's how I have it set up here. This is serif font. This is a sans serif font. That's usually how I structure any of my online work. That's, you know, you only really see sans serif fonts in the internet. The notable exception was the New York Times website, right? And it looks more like a paper, so that makes perfect sense. Moving on to, you know, how do I choose what that serif font or the sans serif font are? Well, UMass has a suggestion for you. If you guys haven't checked out the UMass brand guide, I really suggest that you do that. It has a ton of valuable information. Word marks and seals will get you these vector images that you can embed, right? The brand colors, brand colors, these are a variety of different UMass brand colors. Essentially, UMass says that everything should have the UMass maroon in it. And so all of my presentations have UMass maroon in it. The fonts I use in this PowerPoint are the fonts suggested for online in the typography thing. And then I've also linked to the DAX word mark, so you can use this. So how do you go about making your poster? Obviously, I have made a fake poster within Google Slides. So Google Slides is the first and simplest option. If you're familiar with working with Google products, it's just sort of like a safe bet. PowerPoint probably allows you to customize things a little bit more than Google Slides does. Google Slides is a relatively simple software. Canva, on the other hand, is going to offer you sort of endless customizability, but too much for me, like that. I find it overwhelming. But their UI is really great, and they have so many templates, so you can kind of pick a good starting point. The one thing to be careful about with Canva, though, one, I wouldn't recommend it for like text editing. I would sort of write separately and then copy it in. You also just need to be really careful about getting the poster sizing right, because you can't change it after the fact. And essentially, frequently, you would have to pay for your poster to be sized correctly. So just keep that in mind. How did I make my poster? I made it in Adobe InDesign. I didn't know Adobe InDesign before I made that poster. So like, that was me learning InDesign as I was making that poster. So it is doable, but it requires a learning curve. If you're already familiar with something like Lightroom or Photoshop, like, you'll be fine. If you have a GEO contract, so you're like a PhD student, and you have a TA contract, you can get a free license through UMass, but Adobe has discounted licenses for all students, and a 7-day free trial. So you could opt for that as well. Adobe InDesign definitely offers you the most flexibility or customizability. And you're using it for its intended purpose. It's a software that's specifically designed for print layouts. Okay, so about the DAX poster session specifically, what is this thing? Who is going to be there? It is going to be much bigger than the research design one that we had in the fall. So
everyone anyone is going to be there.
Everyone is going to be there. No, but really, the dean is coming. We're getting the information out there to faculty throughout SBS and sort of beyond to SBS adjacent departments that DAX is associated with. Obviously, we will all be there, but the development people are also using this as an opportunity to bring in UMass alumni, essentially the types of people who speak at the innovation seminar or come to the DAX Leadership Academy, those types of alumni who, have are relatively well positioned within their companies and are essentially prospective employers. So in some senses, this is really just a networking event, right? And it's an opportunity for you to show what you've learned over the course of the year to these people who can potentially give you a job and who might potentially give DAX some money. So we definitely want to impress them. We do have posters from 5 classes. I know some of you are in multiple classes there. There's also a regional planning class. That's how we're getting access to the design building, and some legal studies undergraduates who will be there. The really, really key and most important thing is that everyone must submit their posters by 8 a.m. on Monday morning, May 2nd. So the poster session's on Thursday and your submitted poster needs to be sent to DAX before anyone arrives in the office on Monday morning. Usually people will say Sunday at midnight, but that's meaningless to me. I finish things at 3 a.m. So Monday before work starts. You should submit it as a super high res PNG or PDF. If something suggests that you want to compress the file before, or you want to, do a lower file size, do not do that. Zip the file instead. Don't compress it whatsoever. It needs to be as high res as it can be. Isha also made a wonderful sheet with actual requirements, and the most important thing here is how to save your images from R at the correct resolution. So having a good enough DPI is what will allow the images to, be large enough without looking pixelated. Essentially, you want to save it already knowing kind of how big you want it to be. And if you save it at that resolution, it won't look pixelated when we print the posters. There's one exception to the Monday morning rule. If you're worried that you need a little bit more time, then the way to get an extra 24 hours is by submitting the DAX Google form with your information in it by Friday. So if you submit the Google form and a draft version of your poster, not like a blank poster, but like an actual, I started this draft on Friday, then we'll give you an extra 24 hours and you get Monday to do it. And it just has to be to us by 8 a.m. on Tuesday. I really fought for this. I thought this was important because I know that some of you are working on multiple posters for multiple classes. And so, I feel like it's a safety net that I was going to need. And it's totally okay, but you have to have demonstrated that you worked on it prior to the weekend, or we're not going to, go out of our way to kind of make exceptions. So hopefully that will work for everybody. It is totally acceptable for you to use that handout to make corrections or additions of stuff that you did in the 2 days since you had to submit your poster. I also imagine that Justin and other professors that these might be going to are going to be totally fine with you submitting like a final version to them that's a little bit different from the version that was printed. That's totally okay as well. So when presenting your poster, what should you do? What you shouldn't you do? I thought this girl was funny. You should dress professionally, and you should expect that it's going to be conversational. People will come up and stare at your poster and kind of like awkwardly not say anything to you while you're right there for a little bit. And then they'll ask you a question. Definitely don't let any one person who you're talking to monopolize your time too much, though. People are going to be coming in and leaving, going, and you don't want to, there's always that one person who just like wants to talk your ear off, and you shouldn't let them do that. You should, switch your attention to somebody else who's looking at your poster and ask them if you can explain it to them as well. Make sure you prepare a little bit of an overview of your work and what you did. But really, they want to ask you questions and then get into a conversation. So don't just kind of give a long monologue. Kind of show them the highlights, really point out the figures and graphs and charts that you made, and then allow them to follow up. It's going to be tough because I know many of us might have 2 posters to be at throughout the day. And so I think that the actual logistics of like the final times and whether specific classes are going to be focusing on, wanting everybody from that class there at a certain time, all of that is still a little bit TBD. So that, as those things get decided, we'll also communicate them to you. But you should try to be by your poster when it's busy, essentially. And then when there's a little bit more of a lull is when we'll all go and view each other's posters. So to recap, the end of semester poster session is Thursday, May 5th in the UMass Design Building. Dax will take care of printing as long as you submit it on time. You need to submit a high-res PNG or PDF that is 48 by 36 by Sunday night or Monday morning. Effective posters are visually interesting, but not too busy. We have templates. There are tons of templates online, as well as I'm going to get you guys a Google Slides template. And so you can work from one of those templates, or you can follow up with me and have a conversation about how to learn InDesign in a day. And then just keep in mind that it's a professional event, and your poster and your presentation of yourself and your work should reflect that. I'm really hoping that some of us will get a job out of this. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Maddie. That was great. And I learned a lot, and I didn't even really know that there were going to be these other people that were coming to it. So this is all news to me. So thank God we have a real DAX representative here to help. It looked like there might have been a question. Did someone have a question? Was it Leah or Mike? Thought I saw a hand up. Maybe it went down. Anyway, I know we're over time, but if there are any questions for Maddie, we could also do a Piazza thread on this. We should. There's a project and logistics tags. And
then the slides available somewhere, or could you share this for the links and so forth?
Yeah, I didn't ahead of time, but I will get them to Justin. So
yeah, Maddie, if you get me anything that you want, and I'll put them up in Classroom for this week, any of those materials, and then I'll also, obviously this recording will be up in a little bit.
I might actually steal the recording so that we can post it to other classrooms as well. One more thing that I forgot to mention that I wanted to mention, it's just because the Google form isn't written yet. The Google form will, obviously ask for your, the names of everybody on the project, what class it's for, or class or classes it's for. We're going to ask you guys to submit either an abstract or effectively an abstract that's just maybe a little bit shorter, but like a short description of your project, so that I think we'll probably compile them so that as people come in, they can look at the short descriptions and the titles, have a catchy title, right? So as they sort of go through, they have something to reference, like, oh, this person's project is about this. I'd love to know from people who are online students whether or not you plan to come in for this. And I'd also reach out to me. I'm trying to get a good estimate of how many posters there are going to be. So if you can tell me like, oh, I'm doing 2 posters and one of them's for 2 classes and the other's for 1, all of that is helpful information for me to have.
Great.
Thanks, Maddie.
Yeah, and